much, Mr. Speaker. There are new developments in the SNC-Lavalin scandal just breaking today, and I rise today to bring them to the House's attention. As you'll recall, Mr. Speaker, the Justice Committee decided to convene an investigation into the Prime Minister's interference in the criminal prosecution of the company known as SNC-Lavalin. That investigation, unfortunately, was short-lived. As revelations about the Prime Minister and his team's 20 points of contact with the former Attorney General, in which they made veiled threats, in which they interfered, in which they applied inappropriate pressure, as all of this came to light in the committee, members of the Liberal side, who constitute a majority, voted to shut down the investigation altogether. I was present when that happened, and it was clear that the government had engaged in a cover-up. Now, that being said, we concluded at the time that there was still hope of getting to the truth, and that hope resided in the Ethics Committee. As such, numerous members of this House wrote the chairman of that committee, who would confirm that a motion to carry out an investigation into the SNC-Lavalin corruption scandal was in order. Roughly a week later, members convened at the Ethics Committee under the leadership of that chair and debated whether or not the committee should proceed with an investigation. One Liberal member on the committee had previously voted for a full-scale investigation into a full-scale public inquiry, and thus it was expected that he might be supportive of allowing the Ethics Committee to proceed in carrying out that investigation right within the parliamentary precinct. When presented with the opportunity to do so, and in vote in favor of the motion allowing the investigation to go ahead, he began to speak and said that he was not ruling out a future investigation at the committee, that perhaps at some future date an investigation could proceed, but that doing so would be premature before the Justice Committee had received all of its written submissions and before that Justice Committee had decided to conclude its own work. A second Liberal MP, the member for Ottawa-Vanier, said in a post-committee scrum with the media, "I believe that today we had a conversation on the fact that the Ethics Commissioner is currently studying, and that's why we are waiting for him to get back to us and report. Also, the Justice Committee is working on it as we speak. The chair of that committee will receive more information, so it is premature for us to go forward." I emphasize, premature for us to go forward. So, Mr. Speaker, two members of the Liberal delegation on the Ethics Committee expressed an openness to having a full-scale committee investigation into the SNC-Lavalin corruption scandal. But they had concluded that it would be premature to do so until such time as the Justice Committee received all of its written submissions and heard all of its testimony and concluded its own work on the file. In fairness to those two Liberal members, while I disagree with them, it's a reasonable point of view. No need to have two committees doing the same thing at one time. In other words, why not wait to find out what Justice Committee was going to do with all of the testimony it had received, and what it would eventually do with the then forthcoming written submissions of text messages that both the former Attorney General and Gerald Butts were to provide. Well, now the Justice Committee has done that. It has completely terminated the investigation. It has received all the written submissions. Those submissions have now been published for all eyes to see. The Justice Committee's work is known, and according to Liberal members as of this morning, who met in a secret in-camera meeting, that committee will do no more work on this file. So, the two Liberal members of the Ethics Committee who were waiting on justice to wrap up in order to get final evidence that that committee report would provide is done. And they are ready now. They can no longer claim that it is premature for the Ethics Committee to begin its work. So I report to the House of Commons today, Mr. Speaker, that next Tuesday would be the appropriate day for the Ethics Committee to consider whether or not to proceed with the investigation into the Prime Minister's SNC-Lavalin corruption scandal. I note that he has attempted to shut down two previous investigations. That might cause pessimism among members of this House. However, I also note that there is reason for hope and optimism in that at least two Liberal members of the Ethics Committee have now said that their opposition to an investigation was time limited. In other words, that because it was premature at the time the motion for such investigation came before the committee, they may now have changed their mind because all of the information that that another committee has to provide is now provided. And so the conversation now shifts over to the Ethics Committee, where we will once again debate whether to open an investigation into this file. Now, the Prime Minister has tried to put this matter to rest by shutting it down. Now, when I say the term shut down, I'm quoting the Prime Minister's former Treasury Board president. This is not an allegation of an opposition MP. These are the words of a former member of the Prime Minister's inner circle, a doctor, a woman to whom the Prime Minister entrusted one of the most senior cabinet positions any Prime Minister can offer. She has indicated she believes the government is trying to shut down the investigation into this scandal. It's not working. The Prime Minister has been incapable of grabbing this scandal and forcing it underground. Every time he tries, the people of Canada, as well as conscientious members of his own caucus, speak up against him. So I believe that he will have to conclude 1 week from today that his only recourse is to open the entire matter up for all eyes to see.
Yep.
As he was fond of saying in the last election, sunshine is the greatest disinfectant. So let's lift the curtains over at the Ethics Committee and let the sunshine pour in so that everyone can see the truth.
Sunny ways.
Sunny ways, my friends, sunny ways, as a Prime Minister we all know once said. So, Mr. Speaker, I put you and the House on notice that next Tuesday, a week from today, we will all be watching carefully as Liberal members join with Conservative and NDP members to determine whether or not to end the cover-up and open up a full-scale investigation to get to the truth in this matter. With that notice having been given, Mr. Speaker, I now turn your attention to another important legal matter.